You ever had someone look you dead in the eyes and tell you that you're nothing? Not behind closed doors, not in a one-on-one meeting. No, I mean, in front of everyone. 30 people. Maybe more. And not just say it, but say it loud with that smug little smirk that lets you know they actually enjoyed it. Yeah, that was the day my whole world flipped. And trust me, I didn't see it coming. But what they never saw coming was me. Oh, and before I dive in, if you've ever been underestimated, written off, or stabbed in the back by someone who thought you'd just roll over and take it, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment below if you've ever dealt with someone like this, and don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for how this plays out, because this one's personal. It was supposed to be a regular Thursday. Weekly ops review. Same boring conference room, same stale coffee. I'm standing there walking the team through a sales pipeline projection I'd spent 2 weeks refining. Numbers are looking good, real good. I'd even managed to patch a supply chain issue that had been bleeding us dry for months. Then the door opens, and in strolls Logan Mercer. Now Logan isn't just anyone. He's the new vice president of sales, freshly promoted, legacy kid, the kind of guy who walks like the floor owes him rent. Starched shirt, Rolex flexing off his wrist, and that perfectly engineered haircut that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. You know the type. He doesn't sit, doesn't say hi, just leans against the whiteboard, my whiteboard, crosses his arms, sips whatever overpriced green juice was trending that week, and cuts me off mid-sentence. Honestly, I don't even get why we still carry legacy stuff like this. Dead weight. We're moving forward. Some people? They're just holding us back. Silence. You could hear the HVAC hum. You could hear a pen cap drop. 30 pairs of eyes flick from him, to me, then back to him. No one laughs. No one moves. And Logan? He just smiles, takes another sip, like he didn't just set my entire career on fire in front of half the company. And me? I stood there, frozen. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because my brain couldn't decide which version of me it wanted to be. The professional? The fighter? Or the guy who flips the whole damn table? I felt the heat crawl up the back of my neck, that sting you get when humiliation crashes right into rage. My jaw clenched so hard I thought a molar might crack. But I didn't flinch. Not in front of him, not in front of them. I shut the laptop, clicked off the projector, nodded. No words, just a nod. Walked straight out of that room before my face could betray me. And the craziest part? That wasn't even the worst thing that happened that day. Let me back it up for you. Because if you're gonna understand how deep this cut really was, you gotta know who I am, and who Logan Mercer thought he was dealing with. My name's Ethan Cole. I'd been with that company for over 11 years, senior business development manager. I wasn't some fresh face straight out of grad school. I was the guy who built half the client roster they brag about in investor calls. The guy who flew across the country at 2 a.m. to fix deals on the verge of collapse. The guy who missed anniversaries, birthdays, and even my father's funeral because the company needed me. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't political. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room. I was the guy who delivered, quiet, precise, reliable. And maybe that was my mistake. Because quiet? People mistake that for weakness, for irrelevance. And Logan Mercer, he was everything I wasn't. Flash over substance. Noise over knowledge. A LinkedIn headline with legs. His promotion wasn't about competence, it was about legacy. His uncle was one of the major shareholders. Classic story, right? Logan had been with us for what, a year? Maybe less. And in that short time, he'd managed to bulldoze his way into the VP seat. Not because he earned it, but because nepotism's a hell of a ladder. I remember the first time I met him. Firm handshake. Perfect teeth. Looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Ethan, I'm here to shake things up. No offense to the old guard, but times are changing." I laughed it off at the time, thought it was just bravado. New guy energy. I'd seen it before. They flame out quick when the numbers don't match the mouth. But Logan was dangerous in a different way. He didn't care about building. He cared about appearing like he was building. And when you live for optics, you don't mind setting fire to anything or anyone that makes you look small. And that day in the conference room, when he called me dead weight, that wasn't off the cuff. No, that was calculated. That was the opening shot in a war he thought he'd already won. What hit me the hardest wasn't even the words. It was the looks, the way people didn't know where to put their eyes. Some looked down at their notes, like the table might save them. Others glanced sideways, pretending to check emails that weren't there. Not one person said a word. And that's when I knew I was already gone. The paperwork just hadn't caught up yet. But here's the thing about pushing a man into a corner. You better make sure he stays there, because some of us come out swinging. I wish I could tell you that was the worst of it, that after Logan threw that little grenade in the meeting, things settled, but nah, that was just the appetizer. About an hour later, I'm back at my desk, still trying to process what the hell just happened. Heart pounding, face hot. Every email notification feels like it's carrying bad news. And then, it happens. Ping. New email. No subject line. Just a calendar invite. Check in with HR. No notes, no context, just 3 names on it. Me, Logan, and Emma, our senior HR manager. I didn't need Google Translate to figure out what that meant. I just stared at it. You ever have that moment where your stomach drops so hard it feels like gravity just doubled? That was me. Hands cold, mouth dry, brain running a mile a minute. I text my buddy Greg, works in finance. Dude, HR just hit me with a meeting invite. No subject, no explanation. He replies instantly. Bro, that's the meeting. I knew it. Deep down, I already knew it. But reading those words, it hit different. I looked around the office. All those people I'd mentored, helped, fought for. People who called me when their projects were failing, when clients were screaming, when fires were everywhere, and now, heads down, pretending they didn't see the smoke. And you know what's funny? You start replaying everything, every meeting, every handshake, every fake smile, wondering, how long has this been cooking? This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't Logan having a bad day. This was a play, a move on a chessboard I didn't even know I was standing on. I opened my drawer, pulled out that folder, you know, the one with every accomplishment I'd racked up over the years. Performance reviews, client testimonials, emails from the CEO thanking me for saving major contracts, proof, receipts. I sat there for a second, staring at it, my hands shaking. Then it hit me. None of this was going to matter, not in that room, not with Logan holding the pen. And just as I was zipping that folder shut, a sticky note gets slapped on the edge of my monitor. I look up. It's Maya from operations. Poor girl looks like she just saw a ghost, whispered, Logan wants to see you, 4 o'clock, conference room B. Then she scurried off like delivering that message might infect her. 4 o'clock. I checked the time. 3:12 p.m. 48 minutes. 48 minutes to figure out if I was going to walk in there swinging or walk out with my dignity shattered. And let me tell you, what happened at 4 p.m.? Yeah, that's when everything really burned. 3:59 p.m. I'm standing outside conference room B, hand on the door handle, heart pounding like a war drum. You ever notice how quiet offices get right before something terrible happens? Like even the air knows what's coming. I take one deep breath, push the door open, and there he is. Logan, already seated, smirking like the villain in a bad Netflix drama. Legs crossed, arms stretched across the back of his chair like he owns the whole damn building. On either side of him, 2 HR reps. Emma, trying to wear that polite neutral face like she's not about to swing the axe. And Mark, the compliance guy, who couldn't even look me in the eye. Ethan, Logan says, voice dripping with fake concern. Glad you could make it. Why don't you have a seat? I didn't. Not right away. I stood there. Looked at all 3 of them. Looked at the manila folder on the table. Thick. Too thick. I knew exactly what was inside. We'll try to make this quick, Emma says, her voice as soft as a funeral whisper. As you know, the company's going through a period of transition, and there it was. The script, the same one I'd seen play out before. Restructuring, streamlining, realignment of business priorities. I've used those same words in meetings where we trimmed entire departments like fat off a steak, but hearing them now, directed at me, different. It's like watching someone else drown, until you realize you're the one under the water. Logan leans forward, folds his hands together and says, Let's be honest, Ethan. You've been a solid asset. Really. A reliable archive of knowledge. But where the company's heading, well, it's time for a different kind of leadership. I glance at the folder again, my exit packet. severance details, confidentiality clauses. Probably a pre-written resignation letter designed to make this all look mutual. Emma slides it toward me. "We've prepared a generous package," she says, like she's offering me a birthday gift and not kicking me out of the life I built. I open it. Skim. 6 months base pay, bonus payout, full vesting on my stock options. Honestly, it was more generous than I expected. Because this wasn't mercy. This was insurance. Pay me well enough that I leave quietly. No lawsuits, no headlines. Logan leans back, smiles like a man who thinks he's just pulled off the greatest heist in corporate history. "I want you to land on your feet, Ethan. No bad blood." No bad blood. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to reach across that desk and wipe that smug little smirk clean off his face. But I didn't. I played the game, signed the papers, shook his hand, smiled, and walked out of that room like I was headed to brunch. Not like my entire career had just been shoved into a box. But the second that door closed behind me, that's when the real story began. I walked straight past my desk, didn't say a word, didn't look anyone in the eye, just grabbed my bag, shoved that manila folder inside, and headed for the parking garage like the floor might collapse under me if I stayed 1 second longer. Sat in my car for, I don't even know how long, staring at the steering wheel like it held answers. My hands were shaking, my jaw hurt from how hard I'd been clenching it, heart racing like I'd just sprinted a mile, but I hadn't moved an inch. And all I could think was, how? How did this happen? How did someone like Logan, this walking LinkedIn profile with nothing behind the headline, just dismantle 11 years of my life with a smile and a signature? I replayed it, over and over, that line, dead weight, the smug way he said it. Not like someone delivering bad news, no. Like someone delivering a joke at your expense, and expecting the whole room to laugh. And the worst part? Nobody said a thing, nobody stood up, nobody even flinched. I opened that folder again, flipping through the papers like maybe, there was something I missed, some fine print that would make this all make sense. That's when I noticed it. Tucked inside one of the appendices was a project summary. My project summary. I froze. Flipped back to the cover page, skimmed. My heart hit my ribs like a wrecking ball. There it was, word for word, the expansion proposal I'd been building for 6 months, the one I pitched to leadership 3 weeks ago, the one Logan had brushed off as not aligned with current priorities. He'd taken it, stripped my name off it, rebranded it as his own, submitted it directly to the board as part of his strategic transformation initiative. The rage that hit me wasn't clean. It wasn't fire. It was cold, heavy, like someone poured cement straight into my chest. It wasn't just that he fired me. It wasn't just that he humiliated me. No, he stole my work. He erased me. And now it made sense. Why that meeting wasn't about performance. Why the severance was so generous. Why he wanted me quiet, happy, and out of the picture. This wasn't business. This was a hit job. And as I sat there, staring at the proof, something shifted. Something broke. Something rebuilt. Because let me tell you something about being the quiet one in the room. People forget, the quiet ones. We're the ones who've been watching, learning, listening, and when the time comes, we know exactly where the pressure points are. By the time I pulled out of that parking garage, something in me had snapped, but not the kind of snap where you break down. Nah, this was the kind where everything suddenly gets quiet, terrifyingly quiet, and you realize you're done playing nice. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcast, just the hum of the road and the thud of my own heartbeat. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight I swear I could feel the stitching digging into my palms. And the whole way home, one thought kept circling like a vulture. Logan thinks this is over. He thinks he won. The arrogance, the stupidity. He had no idea who he was messing with. I pulled into the driveway, walked inside, and went straight to my office. Didn't even take off my shoes. Just dropped my bag, slammed the manila folder onto the desk, and opened the bottom drawer, the one nobody else knew about. Inside was a thin black binder, unmarked, dusty, been sitting there for years. Pulled it out, flipped it open. Client contacts, deal histories, private notes, little things, little connections. The kind that don't show up on company databases. The kind you only build when you've been in the trenches for over a decade. And then, there it was. A name, Raymond Douglas, CEO of North Point Industries, one of the company's biggest clients. Scratch that, the biggest client. North Point accounted for 40% of the company's annual revenue. If North Point sneezed, our stock price caught the flu. And here's the thing about Raymond. We go way back. I was the one who closed their original logistics deal 8 years ago. I was the one who got on a red-eye flight to Dallas to calm him down when a shipment fiasco almost tanked his expansion into the Midwest. Hell, we'd played golf together, badly, and laughed about how neither of us should ever hold a 9-iron again. But lately, I remembered hearing whispers, quiet little things, about how North Point was looking for investors, quietly, privately. Something about internal shifts, a potential leadership change. Nothing public, nothing official, but I'd heard it. And sitting there in my home office staring at Raymond's number, I realized something. Logan didn't just fire me, he handed me the sharpest weapon he could have possibly given. Because if North Point was looking for a partner, well, maybe it was time I stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like an owner. You ever have one of those moments where the whole world shifts, where you realize, oh, this isn't checkers, this is chess, and it's my move now. That's exactly where I was sitting. Right there in my office, phone in one hand, Raymond's contact pulled up, staring at it like it was a detonator. But before I hit call, I need you to do me a favor. If you're feeling this story, if you've ever been blindsided, betrayed, or underestimated, smash that like button, drop a comment, let me know what you would have done in my shoes, and hit that subscribe button, because trust me, it's about to get wild. I took a deep breath, dialed, ring, ring. Raymond Douglas, a voice answered. Same voice I remembered, calm, steady, a guy who doesn't waste words. Ray, I said, trying to sound cooler than I felt. It's Ethan. A pause, then a warm chuckle. Ethan, man, haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on? And right then I realized I didn't need some grand speech, didn't need to overthink it, because this wasn't a cold call. This was a relationship built over years. I heard, there might be some opportunities, I said carefully. Opportunities that aren't exactly public yet. Another pause, longer this time. Then he sighed. Yeah, you heard right. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me what's happening. And, oh boy, did he tell me? Turns out, North Point was in the middle of a quiet storm. Raymond's CFO was retiring. Their largest minority investor wanted to cash out, fast. And Raymond, he wasn't looking to bring in another faceless private equity group. He wanted someone who knew the game, someone who understood the industry, someone who could help him scale without gutting the soul of the company. You serious about this, Ethan? He asked after laying it all out. This isn't just writing a check. You step into this. It's real. You're in the trenches. I stared at my computer screen, at the company logo I no longer belonged to, at the email still open with my severance terms, at the document where Logan had stolen my work, scrubbed my name off it, and pretended it was his. And in that moment I smiled. I'm dead serious, I said. Let's talk numbers. Because while Logan thought he'd buried me, all he really did was plant a seed. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a minute. My brain was a furnace, thoughts blazing, plans forming, scenarios playing out faster than I could even process. I sat there crunching numbers, running projections, cross-checking every contact I had, every asset, every possible move. I wasn't just thinking about getting even anymore. No, I was thinking about winning. See, Logan thought he took everything from me, but what he didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something for years. I'd always been cautious with money, conservative, smart, investments here, a little crypto before it was cool, some boring index funds, a rental property or two, nothing flashy, just steady. I opened my banking app, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at those numbers as security. I was looking at them as ammo. I ran the math. What Raymond needed wasn't out of reach, not for me. Not if I moved quick. I could liquidate a few things. Cash in some stocks. Dip into the trust my grandfather left me. A fund I swore I'd never touch unless it was life or death. Well, This felt pretty damn close, but that wasn't the only problem. I needed a partner. Someone who could help bridge the gap. Someone with deep pockets but zero interest in headlines. Someone who knew how to stay quiet, but loved the smell of revenge just as much as I did. And there was one name that popped into my head instantly. Victor Reynolds. Old friend, serial entrepreneur, low profile, high leverage. The kind of guy who'd once told me, "I don't invest in stocks. I invest in people with a grudge." I shot him a text. "You up?" Instant reply. "Always. What's the move?" "Big. Personal. You in?" "Send me the details." 15 minutes later, we were on a Zoom call, me pacing in my office. Him sitting somewhere in a dimly lit cigar lounge looking like the devil's financial advisor. I laid it all out. The company, the opportunity, the numbers, the reason. When I finished, Victor just sat there, silent, staring at me through the screen. Then he grinned. "Ethan, I was waiting for the day you stopped being the nice guy. Let's burn this thing to the ground." And just like that, the game was on. The next morning, I was at Raymond's office by 8 a.m. sharp. No suits, no briefcases, no fake corporate smiles, just two guys who knew how much was about to change. We sat in a conference room that smelled like old leather and stronger coffee. No PowerPoints, no endless decks, just a single folder on the table marked Confidential Equity Proposal. Raymond leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms and said, "I've got 3 other offers. 2 from private equity firms, 1 from a holding group out of Chicago. None of them know this industry like you do, and none of them have skin in the game like you will. So, you tell me, Ethan, why you?" I smiled, calm, controlled. "Because this isn't just an investment for me," I said. "This is personal. I'm not here to bleed the company dry. I'm here to make sure it never has to answer to people like them, ever again." He stared at me, long, hard, then cracked a grin. That's the answer I was hoping for. We walked through the numbers, the valuation, the share breakdown. What he was offering wasn't full control, but it was close. A 35% stake, enough to swing major decisions, enough to make waves. Victor had already wired his portion. I'd moved mine at sunrise, cleared out an investment account I'd held since 2012, plus that old trust fund I'd sworn I'd never touch. By noon, the paperwork was signed. Done. Sealed. I was no longer an employee begging for scraps. I was now a partner in the single biggest client my former company depended on to survive. And let me be crystal clear. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about control. Control of the contracts, control of the supply chain, control of the very oxygen that company breathed. Raymond slid a final document across the table, an amended supplier agreement. Standard stuff, except for one small detail, a new clause. Effective immediately, all preferred rates, schedules, and discounts would be subject to review every quarter. Translation? Prices were about to go up. Service guarantees gone. Priority scheduling on hold indefinitely. Raymond grinned. "You ready for the fallout?" I looked him dead in the eyes. "Oh, I'm counting on it." It's funny. When you pull a thread in the right place, the whole sweater starts unraveling faster than you ever imagined. By 9 a.m. the next day, the first ripple hit. Northpoint's procurement team issued an official notice to Logan's company. Effective immediately, all current agreements are under review. Priority shipments are temporarily suspended pending renegotiation. I didn't even need to be in their office to know what was happening. I could picture it perfectly. Logan sitting in his fake modern office chair, scrolling through that email with that same confused face spoiled kids get when they realize the credit card got declined. At first, he probably thought it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. Maybe someone in logistics clicked the wrong thing. Then, the second email hit. This time from Northpoint's finance department. Invoices for Q3 and Q4 are being restructured under the updated rate table. Rate table, yeah. That's the polite way of saying, "Congratulations, your costs just went up by 18%. And that was just the beginning. I knew their supply chain like the back of my hand. I knew which ports they depended on, which lanes were always tight, which drivers they leaned on for urgent deliveries. I didn't even need to touch the shipments directly. All I had to do Was applied just enough pressure. Priority bookings suspended, preferred warehouse storage on hold, expedited customs processing. Sorry, backlog. It wasn't sabotage. It was business, clean, legal, contractual, all dressed up in the fine print that Logan never bothered to read. By noon, my phone started buzzing. First, it was Jared, the logistics manager at my old company. Poor guy sounded like he'd just walked through a hurricane. Hey, Ethan, weird question. Did North Point change something? Because we've got 3 trucks sitting at the dock with no loading window and I can't get anyone on the phone. I smiled, leaned back in my chair. Yeah, Jared, things are shifting. Then the second call, then the third, then the 5th. By 3 p.m., the panic had officially made its way up the food chain. Logan's direct reports were in meltdown mode. Procurement was on fire. Sales was getting screamed at by clients wondering why their shipments weren't moving. And somewhere in the middle of that chaos, Logan realized something was very, very wrong. But the best part, he still hadn't figured out why. By 4 p.m., the meltdown wasn't just internal anymore. Word started spreading. Fast. Clients were calling. Vendors were emailing. Even a few competitors started sniffing around, wondering if Logan's company was about to implode. And while Logan scrambled to figure out what was happening, I was sitting at my kitchen counter, sipping coffee like it was just another Tuesday. That's when the first text came in. Unknown number. Logan's freaking out. What did you do? I chuckled. Typed back, nothing illegal, just business. But the real moment. Oh, that came when my phone buzzed again. This time not a text, a notification. Emergency board meeting, 6:00 p.m. I wasn't on that email chain, obviously. Not anymore. But Victor was. See, what Logan didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Victor had been quietly buying up shares of the company for the last 6 months. Not enough to take control, not yet, but enough to get himself a seat at the table, and with North Point's contracts, their single largest revenue stream, now hanging by a thread, the board wanted answers. Fast. I could practically hear the conversations playing out. How did this happen? Why weren't we informed? Logan, what's the plan to fix this? But the truth? There was no plan, because Logan didn't even know the root problem yet. He still thought this was some logistics hiccup, a vendor miscommunication, maybe an overzealous procurement officer having a bad day. What he didn't realize, what hadn't even crossed his mind, was that the man he'd called dead weight 3 days ago now controlled his supply chain. And not just that. I controlled his leverage. See, in business, leverage isn't just about contracts. It's about perception, about stability, about confidence. And when your biggest client suddenly goes dark, raises prices, cancels priority terms, and starts whispering to your competitors, that confidence vanishes. Fast. I watched as LinkedIn posts started popping up. Rumors about supply chain issues at company. A few anonymous tip tweets. A Slack message forwarded from an old co-worker. Bro, Logan hasn't left the boardroom in 3 hours. People say he's pacing like a madman. I smiled. Good, because the thing about people like Logan, they're great at playing offense. But when the tables turn, when the storm comes for them, they've got no clue how to survive it. By the time the clock hit 6:30 p.m., Logan was officially drowning. And the best part? The board wasn't throwing him a lifeline. No. They were standing there watching him sink, wondering if maybe they should just let the ocean finish the job. I got a call at 7:04. Not from Logan, from Raymond. He sounded amused, calm. The kind of calm you only get when you know the other side just realized they've been playing checkers on a chessboard they didn't even see. Thought you'd like to know, he said. Logan spent the entire meeting trying to figure out why North Point was being difficult. Took him an hour before someone finally whispered that maybe, just maybe, something bigger was going on. I leaned back, smiled. Did anyone tell him? Raymond chuckled. Oh no, I figured, why spoil the surprise? But the surprise was already in motion. Because while Logan was busy flailing around the boardroom, something else was happening behind the scenes. See, contracts don't exist in a vacuum. When one domino falls, others follow fast. By 9 p.m., our 3 smaller clients who'd been waiting for an excuse to renegotiate, or flat out leave, sent formal notices terminating their agreements. And guess who was on the top of their call list for new service proposals? Yeah, me. Northpoint wasn't just a client anymore. We were now a competitor, a supplier, a distributor, a full-blown logistics powerhouse with contracts, infrastructure, and one very specific goal: make sure Logan never breathes easy again. And the kicker? We hadn't even played the final card yet. Because while price hikes and service suspensions cause headaches, there's something else that causes panic. Legal panic. See, buried deep in the contracts I'd helped write years ago was a little clause, something most people gloss over, something called change of control notification. Translation? If a key partner undergoes a significant shift, new ownership, loss of major stakeholders, or breach of service terms, the other party can review, renegotiate, or terminate without penalty. And guess what? With Northpoint's new ownership structure, including me, that clause just got triggered. I drafted the letter myself. Simple. Direct. Effective immediately, Northpoint Industries is reviewing all active contracts under the change of control clause. Further communications will be routed through our legal department. Sent. At 9:17 p.m., no fireworks, no press release, just one clean bullet through the heart of Logan's entire operation. And the best part? He wouldn't even realize he was bleeding until it was far too late. You know what's wild? Watching a man realize, in real time, that the floor beneath him doesn't actually exist. That's what was about to happen to Logan Mercer. But hey, before I hit you with what comes next, if you're still here hooked, feeling this revenge unfold, smash that like button, drop a comment, tell me what you think of Logan's little meltdown, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. You're going to want to see how this ends. Because trust me, the best part's still coming. By the next morning it was chaos. Full-scale 5-alarm, everyone running around like headless chickens chaos. Emails, calls, slacks. Why are our shipments suspended? Why did Northpoint trigger a legal review? Who signed off on this pricing increase? Where is Logan? And the answer to that last one? Hiding. Logan hadn't shown his face at HQ since 8 a.m. Rumor was he was holed up in his apartment, frantically trying to get lawyers on the phone, calling anyone with a pulse who might be able to untangle the knot he'd wrapped around his own neck. But here's the thing about a knot like this. It tightens the more you struggle. Procurement was in freefall. Finance was sending spreadsheets that looked more like crime scenes than balance sheets. Sales? Oh man. Sales was already in full-blown exodus. I even got a LinkedIn DM from one of their senior account managers. Hey, a random question. If someone were hypothetically looking for new opportunities, would Northpoint be hiring soon? I laughed. Typed back, hypothetically, absolutely. But then, the final nail. Because while all this noise was happening inside Logan's walls, something else was happening quietly, outside of them. Victor called me. Check your email, he said. No hello, no preamble. We got it. I opened my inbox. There it was. A purchase agreement, signed, sealed. Victor had just closed on a minority stake in 2 of Logan's secondary suppliers, not controlling shares, not enough to raise alarm bells, but enough to disrupt, quietly, enough to whisper to the right people. Hey, maybe it's time we prioritize different clients. And with that, the trap was fully set. Logan wasn't just bleeding now, he was suffocating, because when your supply chain collapses from both ends, there's no exit strategy, there's no pivot, there's just the slow creeping realization that everything you built on arrogance, nepotism, and stolen credit is crumbling, piece by beautiful piece. By lunchtime, the cracks weren't just showing, they were turning into full-on fault lines. Internal Slack channels were leaking like broken faucets. I had 3 different former co-workers forward me screenshots within an hour, one from sales. Anyone know why our top 3 clients are suddenly going dark? One from procurement. We can't get confirmation on any shipments, are we under review or something? And my personal favorite, from the CFO's assistant, why is legal asking for all copies of the Northpoint contracts immediately? Meanwhile, I was having coffee. Calm, focused, watching the house of cards fold in on itself. And then, it happened. Ding. New email. Subject line. Urgent. Emergency board meeting, closed session. Victor forwarded it to me with a simple note. It's starting. Because when the board calls a closed session with no executives allowed, you know the knives are out, and right there, Logan finally figured it out. I got the confirmation about an hour later. A text from someone who still worked inside. Someone who, let's just say, was more than happy to spill the tea. Bro. Logan's face went sheet white. Someone handed him a folder mid-meeting. He flipped through it, stood up, slammed it shut, and stormed out. Didn't say a word, just gone. What was in that folder? Oh, only the full documentation of my ownership stake in North Point, the new supplier contracts, the price increases, the service suspensions, and, just to really drive the knife home, a breakdown of how North Point's revenue made up 42% of their gross profits for the year. Without us, they weren't just struggling, they were sinking, fast. The kicker, they'd built the entire Q4 forecast on the assumption that North Point would stay locked in. No contingency plan, no backup. Logan had been so busy playing CEO in training, he never thought to check whether the foundation was still holding. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And as I sat there sipping my second cup of coffee, watching it all unfold, I realized something. This wasn't revenge. This was art. By the next morning, the silence was deafening. You ever notice how corporate chaos has a sound? It's not shouting, it's not screaming. It's that eerie, heavy silence, the kind where no one's replying, no one's moving, no one knows what to do, because no one wants to be the next one under the knife. Logan? Oh, he was gone. Not officially, not yet. But physically, spiritually, mentally, gone. Word was he hadn't shown up to HQ in 2 days. And when leadership ghosts the office during a crisis? Yeah, you already know it's over. I started getting more messages. A former project manager, a senior account executive, a supply chain coordinator, all of them asking the same question. Hey, is it true? Do you really own North Point now? I didn't confirm it, didn't deny it. Just hit them back with a little smile emoji. Let the rumor mill do the heavy lifting, and oh boy, did it ever. By noon, chatter started spilling outside the building. Clients were whispering, vendors were asking questions, competitors were circling like sharks that smelled blood in the water. Then, the first article hit, not a big outlet, just one of those industry blogs. But the headline, major disruption at company. Key client North Point restructures contracts, sparks internal crisis. Short, simple, brutal. It spread like wildfire. And that's when the real fun began, because in corporate America, perception is reality. If clients think you're unstable, they pull. If vendors think you can't pay, they squeeze. And if investors think the ship's sinking, they jump. And Logan? He was standing dead center, watching the whole thing collapse like a sandcastle in high tide. The funniest part? He still hadn't called me. Not once. No apology, no explanation, no pathetic attempt at damage control. But honestly, I didn't need the call, because the next move wasn't going to be a phone call, it was going to be a boardroom, and a reckoning. The call finally came, but it wasn't Logan. It was the chairman of the board, James Callahan, the kind of guy who only reaches out when something's either incredibly good or catastrophically bad. Ethan. His voice was calm, controlled but strained. I think we both know we need to talk. Can you come in today? The board would like a few words. I smiled, looking out my office window, the sun shining brighter than it had in weeks. Of course, I said, polite as always. I'd be happy to. But this wasn't a casual chat. This was an execution, and the boardroom was about to become Logan's personal gallows. I arrived at HQ around 3 p.m., calm, cool, dressed sharp, not to impress, but to remind them exactly who I was, the guy they wrote off, underestimated, and thought was disposable. The receptionist practically jumped out of her chair when she saw me, eyes wide, face pale. She buzzed me up without a word. Probably didn't even know if I was supposed to be there or not. But who was going to stop me now? The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. Not awkward, not nervous, just heavy, like the air knew what was coming and didn't want to be part of it. When the doors slid open, James was waiting. No handshake, just a nod. He motioned silently toward the boardroom, Doors closed, voices muffled behind them. He paused just before opening the door. "You know," he said quietly, "Logan still thinks he can spin this. He genuinely believes this is all just a misunderstanding." I chuckled. Not loud, not cocky, just amused. "Oh, I know," I said calmly. He never was good at reading the room. James cracked a small smile, just for a second, then opened the doors wide. There they were, every board member, grim-faced, silent, and at the far end of the table, Logan, face flushed, eyes bloodshot from 2 sleepless nights, shirt rumpled, the picture of desperation dressed up in an expensive suit. He saw me, and his jaw tightened like he'd just tasted something sour. I walked in, took my seat, the one directly across from Logan. Didn't say a word, didn't need to. James sat at the head of the table, cleared his throat, and said the only thing that needed to be said. "Ethan, why don't you tell us exactly what's going on here?" And as I opened the folder in front of me, the one with every detail, every piece of proof, I saw Logan shift in his chair, eyes darting around like a trapped animal, realizing the cage had just slammed shut. Because now, it was my turn, and Logan was about to find out exactly what happens when you push the quiet guy too far. I looked around that table, faces I'd known for years. Executives, board members, people who'd watched Logan publicly humiliate me just days before without lifting a finger. Now, every single one of them stared back at me, anxious, waiting for the storm they knew was coming. I opened my folder calmly, methodically. 3 days ago, I began, voice steady, clear, no hint of anger, just fact. Logan Mercer publicly labeled me dead weight, called me disposable, replaceable. And while that might seem like office drama to some, what he failed to mention was what else he did that same day. I pulled out the proposal Logan had stolen, held it up for everyone to see. "This," I said, voice firm, "is the strategic expansion plan I personally developed over 6 months. Logan Mercer took it, erased my name, and presented it to this very board as his own initiative." The room went silent. Not awkward silence. Dead silence. I placed the proposal down, pushed it toward the center of the table. But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because Logan didn't just steal my work, he tried to bury me, forced me out, thought I'd quietly disappear. I smiled, looked directly at Logan, whose face was now visibly pale. But instead of disappearing, I invested. Specifically, I invested in North Point Industries, your single largest client. As of 2 days ago, I am now a majority partner there. That means every contract, every shipment, every dollar your company depends on from North Point now goes through me. A ripple of shock spread around the table. Eyes widened, mouths fell open. And in case that wasn't clear enough, I added, keeping eye contact with Logan, I've activated the change of control clause. Every contract is now under review. Rates are increasing. Services are suspended. Your entire Q4 forecast, gone. Logan finally cracked, voice shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. You sabotaged us. This is corporate sabotage. I leaned forward slightly. No, Logan, this is justice. You sabotaged yourselves when you let nepotism and arrogance replace competence and integrity. I turned to the board, meeting each gaze in turn. I'm here to offer clarity. Either Logan Mercer leaves this company immediately, or North Point will terminate all contracts effective midnight tonight. Absolute silence. Logan looked around frantically, desperate, searching for an ally. He found none. James cleared his throat. Logan, I believe your tenure here has reached its conclusion. Effective immediately, your resignation is accepted. Logan tried to speak, sputtered, stammered. Security quietly appeared at the door. James nodded to them. Please escort Mr. Mercer out. And as Logan rose, stumbling, humiliated, defeated, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Because this was exactly what justice looked like. And Logan Mercer. He was never going to forget the day he called Ethan Cole disposable. You know, it's funny. When I walked out of that boardroom, I expected to feel triumph, satisfaction, maybe even a little vindication. But what hit me hardest was relief. Relief that it was over. Relief that justice had been served. Relief that I wasn't that same guy, the one who stood quietly while someone else took everything I'd worked for. In the days that followed, everything shifted. Logan's company scrambled to recover, but without North Point's contracts, they were never going back to what they were. They'd built their entire operation on arrogance and nepotism, and now they'd have to rebuild from the ground up. And me? Well, I stepped fully into my role at North Point. Not as an employee, not as a number, but as a partner, a decision-maker, someone who could make sure that no employee ever got treated the way I was treated again. My inbox filled up fast. Congratulatory emails, job requests, vendors reaching out to re-establish contracts, former co-workers wanting to join my new team. But one email stood out. It was from Logan. Short, pathetic, a last desperate attempt. Ethan, I underestimated you. I admit it. But please, let's meet. We can fix this. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied simply, Logan, you didn't underestimate me. You underestimated justice. Good luck. Sent, closed, done. And here's the real truth. This story isn't just about revenge. It's about reminding you that no one, no matter how powerful they seem, gets to dictate your worth. That the quiet ones, the ones who do the work without demanding applause, they're the ones you should never, ever underestimate. So here's the deal. If you enjoyed seeing Logan get exactly what he deserved, smash that like button, leave a comment below telling me what you would have done differently, and hit subscribe. Stick around. Because trust me, this isn't the last time we're going to see justice served. After all, some stories deserve to be told. Mine just happens to be one of them.